welcome to Chautauqua People. Our guest today is Stephen Glinick. He is a practicing dermatologist in Rhode Island. Chautauquans will know him as the editor of the Chautauqua Gadfly. More about that later. Dr. Glinick, how did you make your way to Chautauqua?
Well, my wife is a Welch of Welch's grape juice family, and my father-in-law, her dad, was born and raised in Westfield, and so Chautauqua was right down the street. The founder of Welch's had a place across the lake from Chautauqua called Chedwell, so this is really family territory. So I was introduced about the time we got married.
Was there a Chautauqua test among your family? If somebody doesn't like Chautauqua?
There still is. And yes, and I passed. And I've been happy to come here for the past 42 years.
That's great. That's great. Now, do the Welchers live on the grounds, or are they still basically in Westfield? Or where do they?
My in-laws are deceased.
Mm-hmm.
We own a house in Chautauqua Shores, actually.
Okay.
And we've owned that for about 25 years now, and been coming here, as I said, for about 42.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What were the best parts of Chautauqua when you first came?
Well, I've always liked the arts, and for me that was the real draw. I liked the architecture and the porch concept, and everybody seemed to be pretty convivial. And academically, I liked the lectures. So there wasn't much I disliked. And at one time, I used to water ski and sail and all that stuff on the lake. So it really had a wide variety of attractive things.
Mm-hmm.
4 pillars are very significant for me.
Are there any more generations in your family who come here?
Well, I'm actually very proud to say that my daughter, Emily, was the general manager for the Chautauqua Theater Company. She just got a promotion.
Really?
She's now the managing director, and she's been doing that for about 3 years. And during college, she started coming and was a stage manager for a number of years. So that was her first career. She got her professional start here. And they now live in our house year-round, which was usually a summer place.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been incredibly accomplished, and she's made a significant difference for the theater here. So we're very proud of her.
So is her employment then with the Theater Guild a year-round process, or is it?
It is now. It used to be summertime only during the season. But she applied for the job as general manager about 3 or 4 years ago, and they took her. And she's been here ever since year-round.
That's great. That's great. Now, let's talk a little bit about your medical background. Obviously, you're a physician, and where did you go to medical school?
My wife and I actually met at Columbia in New York City, and then we did our residency and internship and residency in internal medicine in Providence, and then both migrated into dermatology and went through the Brown program. And then we opened a joint practice, and we practiced together for 35 to 40 years.
Really? Really? Tell me about dermatology. What sorts of issues do you tend to focus upon? Is there subspecialty within it?
Well, anything that's on the skin, hair or nails is under our purview. I spent a generous amount of my time teaching dermatologic surgery to the residents in the Brown program at the Providence VA. My wife taught cosmetic dermatology, but we were mostly what's called general practice dermatology or general dermatology. We did mostly that, but we're pretty avidly involved in teaching the upcoming folks.
So what sorts of things do you normally treat then?
I'm sorry?
What sorts of things would you commonly treat?
Oh, goodness. Hair loss, for one.
I know all about that.
Skin cancers.
Okay.
Rashes, psoriasis, eczema, fungal infections, anything that goes wrong on our surface, we'll deal with.
And I've been told, I didn't realize this until some medical person sent me smart. Often, when you see things on the skin, it suggests something more substantial going on underneath.
Well, there are a lot of systemic diseases that do have manifestations in the skin, sometimes presenting there. And we can often make the diagnoses of internal problems on the basis of the outside of the skin, or there are things that the internist will need us for, particularly rheumatologists, because a lot of rheumatologic disorders have skin concomitants.
They do.
In fact, there's now a thing called dermatology rheumatology fellowships, which probably should have been created decades ago, but has come to fore in the past 4 or 5 years, and all major medical centers put dermatologists and rheumatologists together in various clinics, and they cross-pollinate and educate each other.
Mm-hmm. I thought rheumatology was very different than dermatology.
Well, there are a lot of things that dermatologists won't address, but there's so much overlap because so many rheumatologic illnesses have skin presentations or skin concomitants. Lupus, for instance, is a big overlap for us. And we help them and they help us, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Now let's say a young Chautauquan would find oneself on your porch and say, Doc, I haven't taken good care of myself, my skin. Give me some habits for life, because I want to age well. What would your advice be?
Well, I think the number one thing is to protect yourself from the sun, because most of what we call, especially Caucasians, call aging is sun damage. All the wrinkles, the discolorations. If you look at people that never went out in the sun, they will look 20 to 30 years younger than somebody who had an occupation that took them out in the sun every day. So if you're able to protect yourself, you look a lot better, a lot longer. If you look at our darker skinned population, especially if you look at some of the black sitcoms and things like that on TV, and the mother of the teenager looks a couple years older. She might be in her 40s, but because of their pigment, they're able to protect themselves. By definition, they look a lot younger. Think about Lena Horne. When she was 80, she probably looked like she was 50.
Yeah.
And it had to do with her native pigment. And that's a decided advantage. So us light-skinned Caucasians, if we don't use sunscreens, we're going to pay for it.
So you recommend sunscreen.
Oh, absolutely.
When?
Starting when, well, if the pediatricians like to say no child should be in the sun before 6 months. And every child thereafter probably should be sunscreened every day before they go out. My granddaughter, who's 3.5 and goes to the Chautauqua Children's School, gets sunscreened by my daughter and her partner before she gets outside every single morning, starting around April.
Mm-hmm. Now, are there any, without getting into some commercial advertisement, are there any type of sunscreens you would recommend or factors to look for when buying some?
Well, you want to use a high SPF. That's the sun protection factor. It talks about ultraviolet B, which is the sunburn spectrum. And you can gauge what you want to buy on the basis of that. It's also nice for children to get the ones that don't sting their eyes. Ultraviolet A does not have a number that you can go with. So you want to use broad spectrum items. And they recently suggested that copper tone for kids might be the best one for everybody.
Really?
Yeah, it was ranked very highly. And you don't have to spend a ton of money to get good ones. But the best sunscreen that you can use is the one that you put on. It doesn't do much good to be in your medicine cabinet.
Okay. How about, you said a high number. Can you give me a number that?
100.
100.
100, but you don't have to. If you use a 50 and you use it more than once when you're outside, that's pretty good. It's applying a higher number frequently. That's what counts the most.
How frequently should one do it? Let's say in this climate.
Well, if you're going to be out all day long, at least 2 or 3 times, because when you sweat or swim, it does come off. There's water resistance, but it's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So reapplying it is the way to go. You can't probably prevent yourself from getting a little bit of a tan through a sunscreen, which surely should not burn. If you get pink, you're not using enough or putting it on often enough.
Yeah.
Experience is a good indicator, because if you're a redhead, you're going to need it more frequently than if you're Puerto Rican and have a little baseline color to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me a little bit about melanoma. And I understand that that's sort of we're talking the polite stuff, and now we're at serious business when we get to melanoma.
Well, melanoma can kill you, and it has been increasing dramatically over the past 20 or 30 years.
Really?
Yes, it has gone way up. I think it's I think it might be one of the number 4 killer now. There's breast and all these other things. The melanoma you can prevent. I mean, if you just be careful, wear clothing when you're other than when you're swimming, and use the sunscreens avidly, you can avoid that. Australia is a good example of how you can do public health measures to alter that.
Tell me more.
Well, in Australia, they had 10 times the melanoma of any other country, because they're mostly from England, mm-hmm. and they're Scottish or Irish or whatnot. So they're very light-skinned, there's a lot of sun, and they did not take care of themselves, and people were almost dying left and right. So they started public health measures. They have nurses in all their elementary schools. The kids wear hats, they keep clothing on when they're outside, and they use sunscreens faithfully. And they took great public health measures, and they've dramatically lowered the incidence and the death rate to melanoma just by being proactive.
Wow. So I was under the impression prior to this discussion that melanoma doesn't necessarily have some connection with the amount of sun exposure one's had. And I think of the case in my family was an area that would normally be covered up. But what you're suggesting that yes, sun exposure can provoke melanoma.
Well, absolutely. In fact, it is said that the people who get melanoma are the ones who've had only a few severe sunburns in their youth. And so you don't want that to happen, because often it's blistering sunburns, just a few, that can really provoke melanoma. Now, there's also heredity is a significant factor
mm-hmm.
in melanoma, particularly if you're in a family where people develop a lot of moles, or you have a thing called atypical moles, which is genetic. Those people are at even more risk than just the average population.
What are atypical moles?
Well, they're funny-looking moles that occur in some abundance, and they look odd, even often just to the unprofessional eye. And you are born with the tendency to get that, and you add sun onto that, you wind up with even more difficulties. So if that's in the family, or melanoma is in the family, you're by definition at much greater risk. Those are the people who really have to toe the line.
Mm-hmm. One last melanoma question. How would a layman recognize melanoma?
Well, there's the ABCDs of melanoma.
Okay.
They're asymmetric. They grow oddly, odd shapes, odd colors. Those are the main things that the layman must look for. Size is also a bigger diameter to them is important.
Is there a thumb rule for size when you start getting concerned about it?
Well, a melanoma can be just a few millimeters, but the people that have larger moles often have the atypical moles because they tend to be bigger than conventional ones.
Okay. One last question. I can't resist myself.
Go right ahead.
If you were, again, talking with the young adult here at Chautauqua, and they come back and say, should I have a regular appointment with a dermatologist? What would your advice be? How would you go about decision making for that? Obviously, somebody who's lighter complected is at greater risk than someone with a dark complexion. How often should one go see? How would you make that decision?
Well, they used to say that there should be an annual skin exam, like an annual physical exam. There are not enough dermatologists to go around to give everybody an annual skin exam. So it really should start with your primary care provider. Having said that, if you are extremely light-skinned and you've got more than 4 or 5 moles by the time you enter your teenage years, or they look dissimilar to each other, they're not all the same thing, or if there's a family history of melanoma or atypical moles, those are the folks who probably should see a dermatologist. And it doesn't hurt to have an initial one, and then the dermatologist can decide, yeah, you're somebody that needs to see us, or you're fine, you can do this with your primary care provider.
And my primary care provider sent me off for something that was treated by Mohs, and the dermatologist, they want to see you once a year. So that's it.
Well, that's mostly the conventional skin cancers, of which are much, much more common and less of concern than melanoma.
Right.
Although squamous cell carcinoma and basal cell carcinoma, which are the two conventional ones, they can give you a lot of trouble too, but it tends to be more locally destructive than taking your life.
I thought when people talk about complaining going to a dermatologist, I don't want to show all my skin. That is absolutely ludicrous. That you as a physician, you see this every day, and if some professional doesn't get a good look, you're setting yourself up for trouble if something has started.
Absolutely. A total skin exam means exactly that. Don't be gun shy. Do it. We're doctors. We're used to seeing people.
Yeah, by all means. Let's switch gears a little bit. Tell me how you made the jump from dermatology to community communication and becoming an editor.
Well, I've always had a big mouth.
Okay.
When I was in high school, underneath your high school picture, they put 3 adjectives about you. One of mine was outspoken. So I guess I was born into that. When the Chautauqua News started to publish at Chautauqua, I used to write satirical pieces for them. And Twig Branch ran a sometime publication called the Chautauqua Gadfly. And I had written a letter to the editor in the Chautauqua Daily suggesting that we needed a forum for Chautauquans so they could print letters instead of just once a week. So that could be available to people to exchange information. And the Chautauqua News people came to me and said, would you like to take this over and make this the forum? So letter writers can publish and you can put out the letters and things like that. And I said, I'll give it a try. And so I went into publishing mode as an editor, and just took letters from people who wanted to send them in, and it just got busier and busier and busier. And so over the past couple of years, we've been having edition after edition after edition. And it sort of swept me away. I got busier than I anticipated. And with more and more controversies on the grounds, the publishing world just got busier and busier, and I was doing it at no cost to anybody, and I was intrigued.
How do you distribute it?
It's email completely. Twig Branch had a whole bunch of subscribers. We do it by MailChimp, and I just took that over, and then more people started to write in. We just added them on, and we have an edition, and then it's sent out in a blast to all the people who are interested.
How many get sent out?
How many?
How many subscribers normally have?
We've got about 2,500 now. We started with about 15. I started with about 1,500, and people just sign up. You can sign up if you receive a copy. There's a way to sign up, and word of mouth. That's the way it went.
Now, what percentage of the letters to the editor are published?
Well, I would be happy to publish all of them, but to be honest with you, we only published 10%. And that's because 90% of the people wanted to comment, but they didn't want their thing in print. And that's very discouraging because people had a lot to say. Chautauqua, I think people want to talk quietly amongst themselves, but they don't want to go public. And one thing I noticed, and I think this is a shame, is if they went public, there's always somebody who is going to criticize them. Even their friends would take them to task, which I think is not a good thing on the grounds here. So I couldn't get people to give me permission. So I would answer them kind of like Ann Landers, and then try to coax them into going public. So it was only 10%. So what I would do is I would amass all these letters, and I would occasionally write editorials trying to sum up a lot of the stuff that I got. It would be attributed to me. But what I was doing was taking these letters and trying to put the information out so the public could hear what the other citizens were saying, but their names weren't on it.
I didn't realize that so many of those editorials were actually synthesis papers.
Yeah, it depends what I would receive. If I had 5 or 6 people saying the same thing and none of them would say anything, I would try to say it for them.
And I didn't realize so few of those submissions were without attribution.
Well, that's why the powers that be would discredit us by saying, well, it's only one guy saying all this stuff. And that wasn't true. I was doing some summarization for the Chautauqua citizenry.
Now, we've had a leadership change, and most of us remain immensely hopeful about the future for the institution. Where do you see the Gadfly going?
Well, we said this a long time ago, that what we really needed to see was no necessity for the Gadfly. And that may be coming true. I get far fewer letters than I did before the changeover. There seems to be a greater deal of equanimity. And I think the zeitgeist on the grounds feels better. A lot of people have been coming up to me and saying, boy, people seem happy. And I'm happy to report that I'm getting more positive stuff now, less griping, less complaints. And so it may be that if the powers that be are open and go around talking and are receptive to people, and there's the powers that be go out and meet with the people on the grounds and solicit information, Gadfly may not need to be anymore. We'll see what happens.
So there's reason to first of all to have observed a change in the attitudes of the folks on the ground, and secondly, the Gadfly adjusts as is necessary to what you receive in terms of the mail.
Yeah, no, there's far less stuff coming in, and I interpret that as positive. Also, our interim chief executive, Kyle Keogh, he's out and around. He wants to hear from people. I mean, and every time he stands up in front of the public, he says, "Talk to me." That's a big change.
Indeed.
And it's a real positive change, and I really admire what he's doing.
Indeed, indeed. He's got some tough decisions about finances
Well,
to be made probably in the fall.
we've been left with considerable financial problems, yes. I'm fairly confident that it can be fixed. We're going to need Chautauquans all putting their oars in the water and pulling together.
Right, right. Now, do you see yourself bringing some others in to edit papers?
I
for
don't
the
think
Gadfly?
anybody wants to spend the time. I mean, I was getting about 4 hours of sleep a night last summer
Whoa.
because we were really going great guns. Things are much calmer now. I don't mind it this year. I don't feel as worn out as I was.
Is a good night's sleep good for your skin?
Yes,
I couldn't resist.
it is.
I couldn't resist.
Yes. Good diet, good behavior. Yes.
How about alcohol?
I think I'm a moderation guy. I don't like to make absolute statements. I mean, do I have liquor? Yes. Do I overdo it? No. It's not good for any part of your body to have too much. But I think everything you do in moderation is okay.
Have you thought about putting some health guidance in the Gadfly? I couldn't resist that one too. I'm sorry.
Well, you can get too dispersed about things. The Gadfly to me was about Chautauqua and where is Chautauqua going, what is best for Chautauqua. I did put a thing in, and here's a little pitch. The daily stopped covering sports. So I put a request in the other day, does anybody want to do some articles for sports, which I'd be happy to post in the Gadfly to supplement what we lost in the daily. But no, I don't think I want to run a health column, thank you.
Okay. So that settles it. What else do we need to cover about advice, both as a community member who wants to talk and as someone who wants to have a long life free of major skin cancers or having them controlled?
Well, the first thing I say is avoid stress. Use Chautauqua to be chilled out and calm and enjoy all the offerings that we have. That does include recreation. So from a dermatologic standpoint, if you're out sailing, you're swimming, you're biking, tennis, pickleball, whatever, use the sunscreens there, cover up, and get your exercise.
Got it, got it. And that's really good advice, isn't it? And it doesn't cost anything to get some exercise.
No.
To cover up. We are out of time, and I hope you'll come back in a year or two after things settle down. We have some new leadership, permanent leadership, and let's talk again.
I'd
Thank
be
you so
happy
very
to.
much.
Thank you
We'll
for
see
having
now.
me.
You bet.